Well, hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Keys to the Shop, where we give you insights, inspiration, and the tools you need to grow as a coffee service professional. My name is Chris DiFirio. I'm your host for the show. And as always, I'm glad to have you here. And I would encourage you to subscribe to the show, of course. And if you love what we do here and it's really helped you in your career or in your business, give us a rating or review on one of these platforms. Give us a 5-star rating and maybe even type some cool stuff out that really helps the show, helps more people find the podcast. So that would be really amazing. And also, one of the things we do here at Keys to the Shop is the key holder coaching groups. This is a cohort of coffee shop owners who have experience running their coffee shops, but as it goes in coffee shop ownership, it's kind of a lonely road and you need some support, some outside perspectives, encouragement. You need some accountability and insights that will help you grow your business and just, fortify yourself, grow yourself. And that's what we have experienced for 3 seasons of this now. We're wrapping up our 3rd, and the 4th one is starting soon, very soon, in a matter of weeks. So if you are interested in being considered for membership in this group, go ahead and email chris@keystotheshop.com, and I will contact you. We'll have a conversation. I'll send you the application. And then the groups are going to be selected, and we're going to get started at the end of March 2025. So key holder coaching groups might be something that really shifts your reality and it kind of transforms the way that you're approaching your work and grows your business in 2025. I would encourage you reach out, chris@keystotheshop.com. Now, today's sponsors of the show are the great folks over at Arto Brick, at Arto Brick on Instagram, and then the Pacific Barista Series, plant-based beverage powerhouse. Those folks are great, pacificfoodservice.com. We're going to talk about both of those folks later in the episode today. Really grateful to have them on board as sponsors of the show. But today I wanted to talk to you a little bit about professional development and give you some thoughts on how to embrace this. And one of the things that we have been really hearing a lot about, of course, is the rising cost of coffee. The C market is doing some crazy stuff, and a lot of roasters and operators of coffee bars that are customers of roasters are having to raise their prices. It's every other post I see on Instagram is a well-worded, hey, dear customers, thank you for the support for these many years. And, we're going to be raising our prices. You might have noticed things are getting more expensive. And I applaud everybody who's doing that. I think we are kind of bad usually at raising our prices in the coffee shop. We don't really even keep pace with inflation most of the time. So this move, it's got me really thinking about what we're doing to create more value for the customer. Because as I've said in a couple of comments on Instagram posts here and there, or on LinkedIn posts, we are in a position now where people don't have as much grace for dropping the ball when it comes to value, when it comes to the hospitality experience, the service, the quality and consistency, all of that stuff. And rather than, I'm not a big advocate to say, well, the way you get consistency is just get the machines in and get the people out. Rather, I think what we need to be doing is leaning into the professionalization of our workforce. I'm a big fan of this idea of having a leaner, more capable team, some group of people who maybe it's not 13 people, but it's 8 people that are, getting a lot of hours. They're very well trained, compensated well, sticking around longer, kind of like a professional environment. What we have instead for a lot of coffee shops is we try to pay as little as possible. We end up with this enormous staff stuffed with people doing very, surface level work. And it feels, and it is a lot, and you feel tired at the end of the day. because you have done a lot of stuff, but we wasted a lot of energy, and you have wasted a lot of money on this team of people that you really don't have the capacity, given the size, to train to the degree that they will feel pride in their work. And I've been in that position many times where, as a barista, I know the stuff that I'm doing, even if I'm in a position of slightly elevated authority, I know that what I'm doing is sort of like a glorified clerical job. There isn't a lot of pride in the craft because more or less I'm just kind of left on my own. There's not a lot of professional development outside of what I supplement myself. So I will go and read articles in Barista Magazine or Roast Magazine. I will go and compete, or I'll spend a lot of time on YouTube or on Instagram. And I will bring these things into the cafe. And educationally and professionally, that's kind of like the barista tipping the owner. It's a tipping culture when it comes to, I don't want to say intellectual property, but it's basically like, if it weren't for the ambition of career-minded baristas bringing these things in on their own volition versus the very penny wise, pound foolish ownership of a lot of cafes, we wouldn't have half of the value that customers come to our coffee shops for. So, what we need to do right now, especially if we are trying to really make the customer realize we take delivery of value seriously, we're raising our prices, we have to raise our standards. The way that we train our staff has to be elevated, it has to be systematic, it has to be the right people that we're hiring, trained the right way, and continually coached and invested into as professionals on purpose, mainly in the ways of how we do the things on the menu. We've talked about this before, and the way that this cafe works. And then from there, you can supplement with things that other coffee bars are doing, competitions, and the stuff that dwells outside the four walls of your trailer or your brick and mortar, or the four walls of your cart. But that little world is the thing that we train people in, and that's where we develop professionals. And there's not just the technical skill, but it's a mindset of professional development that we can instill within people that I think is more present than we give it credit for. We often hear people talk about how people don't want to work, the generation, whatever, is lazy. But I often, when I dig deep into what was done to train somebody, it's a lot of this trial by fire onboarding. It's one or two, shifts of showing the ropes, and then it's this big complaining fest about how people aren't getting it and things like that. And we're not treating people like professionals, but we're expecting them to fill in the gap of professionalism. And we don't actually like some of the stuff they bring in. You can't really fault them, though, because you haven't given them the top priorities of what it means to be a professional in your coffee shop. So we have to start with us first. You, as the leader, have to provide the details of how to win at work in this cafe through how we treat each other, how we treat the customer, the space, and the product. And that beautiful sort of dance between all of those things is what a professional coffee person does. Now, the way that you do that is, first of all, like I said, showing the nitty-gritty of how to do the work day in and day out. But also it comes down to the why. It comes down to your mission, vision, and values. You have to have those things dialed in. And you'll see in the show notes an episode talking about how to teach your baristas your values. This is one of the things we start clients with all the time at Keys to the Shop Consulting. And I will say this, after people get really good at the coffee part and the hospitality part, and that you'd have to have a plan for, how do we show hospitality at this cafe? How do we make an espresso, steam milk, alternative milks? What does mopping and sweeping look like? When does that happen? How do we deal with customer complaints? And what's the communication system? There's all this craft of operations, we call it, that needs to be a part of the professional development of an individual in your cafe. And I love what was said by David, the trainer, one of the trainers at Go Get 'em Tiger, way back in one of our past episodes. It might have been a couple of years ago on holistic training. You're hiring people as though they are a manager. Hire people that you think will be management material, people who are already rather responsible, professional minded people. I kind of think secretly we don't hire those people because we know we will disappoint them. We are just figuring it out ourselves. And I don't want somebody with a lot of expectations to come into my coffee shop and really show the truth about how unprepared I am to develop them professionally. And so if that's you, if you know that that's kind of true, it's fine, because that means now you have the opportunity to plan on what professional development looks like. Start with what you have right now, start with yourself. And then when those professionals with that kind of pedigree or experience, that responsible and ambitious and curious person who really is passionate about coffee comes into your cafe, you're not going to be intimidated by them. You're going to be more like, this is the place for you, because that's who we are. And we know that's who we are because we did it. We planned it. We have the onboarding system. We have the materials. We have our standards that were very well thought out. And we're actually doing it day in and day out. So now that I've talked a little bit about professional development and how my mind works around this, I think it's helpful to tie it back to value. Because this team of people, let's just say Cafe X has this team of people who are all dialed in, professionally minded people. They have been trained well. They've been hired and trained well. They are compensated well. They have in their mind a high degree of standard and responsibility for the cafe and for how they execute hospitality. They treat this like a career. This has been the dream for a long time for the coffee industry. Outside pressures of having to deliver value to justify higher prices is a great opportunity to try to see that come to reality. And so the value the customer gets is they get a better experience. When you have that team that's dialed in, it's going to be a better experience. You know it is, because the person is more aware of their own actions. They're taking personal ownership and responsibility for the service they provide, not just to the customer, but to their coworkers with respect to those mission, vision, and values. And they're also taking responsibility for how they represent the industry to the customer. And by the way, all of this, you can kind of switch the wording around and use this as a means to train people to say, this is what we're looking for. This is what we are all about here. So in the job description of a barista, I always recommend people have a paragraph that describes, what does this role even mean? First of all, what is it in the cafe? What does it do? Why is it important? And then what does it do in terms of the industry? A barista represents the final iteration of a product that took a long time to get there. The farmers need us to be discussing, talking about, like, these conversations that are happening around the pricing and what is on the consumer end and the retail end. Yes, it's kind of a crisis, not to take anything away from the crisis that has been going on for a long time with farmers, but it is good and right that we take responsibility to have these conversations and urgent conversations to keep our doors open, to do well in our coffee shops, because the more coffee you sell and the more good coffee you sell in terms of how you showcase this product, right? The better it is for the farmer, because that is a reliable demand for that product. It is a reliable place where that coffee goes. But if all these coffee bars are going to shut down, that it is a vulnerable industry. It's already vulnerable. So if we really want to help the entire supply chain, then we need to be very much experts first in what we are doing and our responsibilities in our place in the supply chain. Here in this podcast, we focus on coffee shops, and there's a supplemental education on occasion around the supply chain when it comes to farming and importing and roasting and that kind of thing. And I would include roasting and retail, I suppose. But we talk about coffee shops because we have this very complex platform on which coffee is showcased that happens to involve a lot of unique and beautiful individual people that have an opportunity to be developed as they showcase the coffee. And that is part of what we don't just develop the coffee, we develop the people who showcase the coffee. And if we don't do that, then the coffee suffers. And then the people behind the coffee suffers. So really, it kind of always goes back to people. So in professional development, we have to first focus on what we're doing, but we also have to focus on other areas of expertise that can help us in the cafe be better at what we do. Hey everybody, it's Chris, and we'll be right back to the show, but I wanted to talk a little bit about Arto Brick. Arto Brick on Instagram, at Arto Brick, ARTO. You know, when you're walking into a coffee shop and there are just it feels solid, feels like there's a depth to it. A lot of times it's the materials that people use. If you're looking for hard surfaces, stonework, tiles, made in the USA, right in LA, family-owned company that puts a lot of intentionality into helping people create unique spaces, then Arto Brick is where you need to go. Arto.com is their website, but the best place to go is their Instagram, at Arto Brick. And reach out, DM Armen, ARMEN. And, Armen was a past guest on the show, so you can listen to that episode. It's really fun. And let them help you as you design your amazing space, your unique coffee shop space. Arto Brick can help you really make it special. So again, check them out at Arto Brick on Instagram. Another sponsor of the show today, we have the Pacific Barista Series. That is made for baristas, tested by baristas, loved by baristas for decades. PacificFoodService.com. Get samples in your shop and try it for yourself. It stands up to the heat from steaming, has amazing texture for latte art. It also creates balance in the cup, so the coffee is always the star. They've been supporting the barista community with these products, but also just in general. You can see them at competitions, you can see them at industry events. They love coffee. They love coffee people, and their products show it. So check them out again over at Pacific Food Service. If you're looking for the best plant-based beverages for your customers, check them out, the Barista Series from Pacific. I just saw a post. Leila Gambari is a amazing person, amazing coffee consultant, past guest on the show, past US Barista champion. But I just saw a post on her Instagram account. It was talking about, I think it was tips for opening a coffee shop. And I think tip number 2 was learn about business, not necessarily coffee. Now, I probably butchered that. I'm not remembering it correctly, but basically it was saying, hey, you think because you're really good at coffee, you are going to be great at coffee business, but you actually have to be really good at business. And this speaks to a big issue that we have in coffee, where we sort of put these titles on people, but we don't prepare them for what the title basically means. We say, you're a manager, you're a leader, you're a business person, if you're an owner, you're a trainer, you're an educator. We kind of appropriate these labels and then wonder why people burn out in their positions, because we were kind of relying on them to be so excited about the title that they would do what we think baristas always do, which is go out in your free time and rustle up some resources for yourself and help it make my business better for me. And that's not the way that we can do that anymore. We can't rely on the goodwill and charity of ambitious baristas to supplement the lack of resourcing from administration, from the owners. And so it would be great, wouldn't it, to see people go to take a class on how to teach, how the learning styles, or how to communicate, how to listen, how to speak, how to do any number of things that you can just find courses on this stuff, or take a business course. If you're going to run a business and own a business, learn about business, and it's not going to take away from your coffee. It's not going to make your barista trainer less of a barista trainer because they learned about frameworks and communication styles and things from somebody, gosh, outside of coffee. This is stuff that we do on the show. Like, we bring people in from the outside of the industry because they're experts in these other areas that all find a home somewhere in the coffee shop. Coffee is the product. It's the vehicle. It's our passion. And in order to make that a sustainable thing for everybody, we need to shore it up with professional development in a bunch of other areas besides coffee. And if you're a small business owner, you don't necessarily have endless amounts of money, but you do have the opportunity to upskill your staff in these positions to the degree that maybe they could take a course. That's the bare. And what I don't mean is, hey, now you're a trainer, go get certified at the SCA or go to a coffee school. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't at some point, if that's right for you, okay? But that's not the same thing as learning to become an educator from somebody who may not know coffee, but they're very much an accomplished educator. And we usually would want adult education. And this kind of thing, if your barista had it, would follow them the rest of their lives. It'd be a skill that they have. And they would look at that work that they did with you as something that, wow, this really helped me actually be successful, not only for the company. Your company not only benefits, but this barista then has glowing reviews about the way that they were resourced to do their job well. But instead, with professional development, what we see is a little bit more of this, piecemeal. We're going to patch it together here and there. It's not going to be something very seriously thought about or structured. And most of the time, we don't think about professional development for our managers. We think we're the ones that are supposed to be the dispenser of all wisdom and knowledge about all the positions in the cafe. And we try to manage all of these different positions and get no help in the process. I would encourage you, if you're thinking about putting somebody in a position of delegating authority to somebody and saying, I'm going to make this person a manager or a trainer, you've got to be thinking about what that person needs skill-wise, besides coffee, to do that job well, and then how it is you're going to have accountability. They're going to have accountability somewhere. You're going to hold them accountable, but you have to know what you're going to hold them accountable for. So if you don't even have a clue or a framework about what it looks like to lead or manage, then that person is doomed. You're not going to know how to tell them good job. You might tell them good job, but it might be just empty. They know you don't mean it because you don't know what you're doing, and they don't know what they're doing. And everyone's good job, until we're out of a job, So that's what I would encourage you to do, is first figure out what this role or position needs in order to do well. What are the skills besides coffee? And then figure out, how do we bestow these skills upon people through courses? Maybe it's your own curriculum that you get from courses that you've taken over the years. But upskilling people and making a professional environment in the cafe is a lot more than just learning about coffee. As you see, again, it's the communication, it's teaching, leadership, and it's also making sure that you are able to be taught by the people that you have given authority to in the cafe. We cannot be rigid as people. If we're going to develop others, if we think that the trainer should be developed or the barista should be developed, we too, in a leadership position, or if you're the owner, you should be willing to be developed also. Now, again, that could be with a business course. you go to Coffee Fest, you go to SCA, you learn something, you read a book, listen to a podcast, you can develop yourself. But one of the things you can also do is allow your community of professionals to develop you, because they're reflecting to you a certain need that your business has. They are the eyes and ears. They are the reflection of what is the soul of your company, to the degree that you couldn't do alone. A lot like, a professional lens on a telescope can capture more light and show you things that are farther away. It can do more. It can see more. And so it is with your staff. When you've got this professional group of people, I don't think it's enough for you to simply, resource them well, and, they have this sense of pride in work and professionalism and all of this stuff, right? I think we're like 95% of the way there. But if you never allow them to see that you've listened to their perspective and actually changed as a result of it, something about the way that you operate, then I think we're missing a little bit of what makes this all kind of gel together. You have to lead by example. We always like to talk about leading by example. It's one of the best ways for people to actually take ownership of their own work, is to see somebody else who is their boss do that work themselves. That whole caught, not taught thing. Well, if they see that you have respect for great ideas, respect for a piece of feedback that somebody gives you, this person who you've invested so much time and energy into, of course, why wouldn't you listen to them? If you're paying your manager a lot of money and you've sent them to get some communication skills and some management and leadership skills, and you've done a book study together, you've read Unreasonable Hospitality and It's Okay to Be the Boss, you've done the workbook, and you're just like, yeah, but then you don't listen to them. What are we doing? Right? We have to also be willing to be developed. That's the thing, okay? Without that, I think eventually all of the goodwill that you put out there to develop others will be seen, as lacking. Now, the beginning of this, we talked about the price of coffee and how consumers are weighing in the balance how much money they're willing to spend on coffee. I think those places that are delivering a wonderful experience of consistent excellence, great hospitality in a wonderful setting, and engender a lot of goodwill to their customers, and they lean into that. They get energized by a long line, not shut down. They are professionally minded people who are just passionate about serving well the thing that they get the honor to serve, that coffee that journeyed so long to get here. This is what we want, right? But that doesn't happen accidentally. That is a crafted item. It comes from the way we lead, the way we set people up for success, the way we resource them with educational opportunities to make the training and management role successful. That is going to be shown in the experience. And over the years, the customer is going to say, hey, it might cost more, but I could not go anywhere else. They are the kindest, most, prompt and passionate people with the tastiest coffee, and their bathrooms are clean. I mean, there's all sorts of stuff you could say here. But other shops, let's say, that don't embrace this idea of developing their staff professionally and bringing up that skill level and elevating their standards, and maybe having a bit of a leaner staff, but with a higher pay rate and a collective professional development that goes both ways. delivering that excellence, they're cutting corners. They're trying to get away with as few staff as possible, but a little bit too few, paying as little as possible, and people feel a little bit demotivated here. And it all sort of bleeds out into the customer experience, where it's, instead of goodwill, we're actually putting little red flags in people's minds. And if that's been happening for a long time, the customer would just as soon buy a coffee machine at IKEA or something, or online, and make coffee at home than come back to your cafe. If you're going to charge that much more and the experience isn't better, the coffee is still inconsistent, or it doesn't, in terms of levels or taste or temperature and all this stuff that good training produces, it's not friendly, things are dirty. I mean, we really need to step up our game in coffee shops if we want to see coffee shops survive. If you want to see your coffee shop survive and thrive, in fact, not just make it and skate by, your community will support you when they see how seriously you take your role to serve. It will be a virtuous cycle. And so that's what I wanted to talk about today. This idea that now is the time for us to invest in professional development across the board as we shift our focus to delivering higher degrees of excellence across our cafes. The customer is going to see that, and even if you raise the price, they're going to be willing to pay it, because you're not just serving coffee. You're serving a need that people have to gather together with a group of others who are all about goodwill toward each other, whether that's you in your professional environment and the way that you are developing yourself to make sure you are providing this platform for a long time for them, so they don't have to worry about the foundations of this coffee shop. They can just come in and enjoy it, knowing that you've got business handled. You're a good business person. You're not just cobbling all this together. People can't really enter into enjoyment of an experience that much when they can't really trust it. So let's embrace professional development. Let's bring in some outside expertise into our coffee shops to develop our people beyond just nerding out on coffee. Let's open ourselves up to being developed by these professionals that we want to staff our coffee shops with. And in the end, the customer wins, we win, coffee wins. And I think that's a win. So that is what I wanted to talk to you all about today. Now, there are lots of episodes that I'm going to link in the show notes that are good related episodes, things about listening and communication and leadership and professional development. So if this is something that resonated with you and you're just fired up and you want to pursue professional development in your coffee shop for all the reasons that we talked about today, then go to those links and listen to those episodes, formulate a plan, and start rolling it out in your coffee shop. I think it's really going to be beneficial. So if you have any questions or comments, feel free to email chris@keystotheshop.com. Also, Keys to the Shop Consulting is where you and I get to work together one-on-one in coaching and consulting for your coffee shop, whether that's a project to elevate the operations of your existing cafe or you're opening your first one. This is what I spend a lot of time doing. And if you're interested in that, go ahead and email the same email, chris@keystotheshop.com. So that's it for our episode. Thanks everyone for joining me. And as always, I hope that this episode has truly given you keys to the shop.